So your time is going to start rolling right away. So you need to reach out to an attorney who knows products liability right away and get the advice that you need.
If you're injured because of a faulty or dangerous product, what kind of help is available to you? Well, we're going to find out, because that's what we're going to Ask the Lawyer. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest is Kentucky attorney Tad Thomas. Tad, good to see you again as always. Thanks for helping us out.
You too, Rob. Good to see you.
So we're talking about what lawyers call product liability. Tell us what that is.
You know, a product's liability can be all sorts of different things. Any product that is put out on the market by a manufacturer can be defective in a couple of different ways. Lawyers talk about manufacturing defects and design defects. So, for instance, you can have a car that causes injury because it was designed improperly from the beginning. So all of the cars of that make and model are defective and can cause injury. Or you can have a manufacturing defect, and let's say on one particular day, one machine wasn't working, and so the car's unsafe that came out that day. And so that's what we call a manufacturing defect. But it can apply to any type of product, from cars and vehicles to defective pharmaceuticals or even medical devices.
Can it also apply to just like household appliances and things like that something goes haywire?
Absolutely. And children's toys. You know, one of the cases I handled was involving a child's toy that the chemical in the toy, when a child would swallow it, and, you know, little kids swallow toys every now and then, it actually would work almost like the date rape drug, and the children would lose consciousness and lose control of their bodies. And so, you know, even something as small as a toy.
Wow, that's crazy. And so that sounds like a pretty serious injury. Are we talking just the whole gamut of injuries that are possible from a product liability?
You know, it can be anything. And interestingly, in that case, it was a very serious issue for the parents, obviously. But after a couple of days, the child fully recovered. So that was good. But we have a lot of cases where people don't. And it can be, you know, like a motor vehicle case where you have a tire that blows and the car flips and someone can be killed. We have cases where people get cancer. For instance, you may have heard about the Roundup cases, and Roundup causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So they can cause very, very serious injuries.
These days we hear about the global marketplace, Tad, and more and more things are made overseas. Does that lead to more of these kind of situations? And does it make the job more difficult for somebody like you as you try to figure out who's to blame?
It can. It makes it a lot more complicated, but not impossible to pursue the claims. For instance, in the child's toy case, I was telling you about, the United States manufacturer that designed the toy, designed it properly, but then they sent it over to China to be manufactured. And the Chinese company that made it changed the chemical compound in it. And so that's why it became dangerous. And so it becomes more difficult to pursue companies that are overseas. But typically, the United States companies that do business with the companies overseas are responsible for the products that they're importing. So, you know, someone who is injured by a product manufactured overseas can still seek recourse in the United States.
Is there ever a time where the seller could be responsible too? I mean, I know so many things are being sold on Amazon that, you know, there's so many different levels. Could that happen sometimes too?
Absolutely. You know, it depends on what the seller knew or should have known, is the law in most states. And it also, if they change the product in any way, you know, a lot of times products come from overseas and they're still in parts. And then you have an American company that's a manufacturer essentially assembling the product. And cars are made that way. And so depending on what role they had when the product comes into the United States, they can still be responsible as well.
Somebody's injured by a product that maybe has been recalled. Does that mean then they don't have a case, Tad?
No, it actually means they probably have a better case. You know, the fact that it's been recalled means that some government agency has already made the determination that the product is unsafe. So if anything, that would help your case.
So let's follow that along. Someone's injured by whether it's a household product or some other sort of product. What's the process? What should they do? What's your expert advice there?
The most important thing is to keep the product. You know, so if you're injured because of a pharmaceutical and you have some of the drug left over, make sure you keep that for your lawyer. If it's a household product, there's some cases out there involving blenders, for instance. You need to make sure you keep that. Don't get rid of it. Even in cases where we have medical devices like a defective hip that have to have surgery and have it taken out, we actually work with the hospitals and the surgeons to make sure that the hip is retained so that we have that evidence. So the most important thing is keep the evidence. The second most important thing is reach out to a lawyer right away, because in every state, there is a statute of limitations that will cut off the date in which you can file suit and seek recourse. That starts in most states as soon as you believe you've been injured as a result of a defective product. So your time is going to start rolling right away. So you need to reach out to an attorney who knows products liability right away and get the advice that you need.
Is there any benefit, Tad, to contacting the manufacturer directly? Let's say somebody was injured, say, I'm just picking a thing here. Well, use your blender example. Is there any benefit to calling the manufacturer and saying, hey, your product hurt me, or wait and let your attorney do that sort of thing?
Typically, no. Let me give you an example. We have a case now, a products liability case, where the company did have a compensation plan so that if someone was injured by their product and called, they would be compensated. After we got into the case and filed many, many cases, the average compensation for the clients that we represented was far greater than what that company had been paying in their compensation program. So, you still want to reach out to an attorney and get some advice. If you have a small case, they may tell you to reach out to the manufacturer. But especially if it's a serious injury, you need to talk to an attorney first.
Imagine if you get their compensation, they're going to have you sign something that makes sure you have no more recourse after that.
Absolutely. They're going to have you sign a release. They're probably going to have you sign a confidentiality statement saying you can't talk about it with anyone. So, definitely reach out to an attorney before you sign anything. Get some advice on whether or not it's an appropriate compensation for your injury, and that the release doesn't cause you more problems going forward. So depending on how the release is written, some payments are taxable, some aren't. So you really want to get the advice of someone who knows what they're doing.
Lots of great information, as always, Tad. Thank you so much for helping us out and answering our questions.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Kentucky attorney Tad Thomas. Remember, if you want the best information or you like being able to make sure you can choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, head over to AskTheLawyers.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyers.